Hi everybody, this is Phil Holoka from Complete Captive Management Services, and today we conclude our three-part series on the structural documents with a conversation about the policy and the reinsurance and the retrocession agreements. So let's jump right in. The purpose of the policy is to protect the employer against the cash outflows caused by fortuitous events or perils that occur to an organization. Simply put, when something happens, it's going to cost the organization money, and the purpose of the insurance policy is to make that company whole or as close to being whole as they were before the event. Generally, captive insurance policies are reimbursement policies. So that means the employer has to pay for the cost of that event and then seek reimbursement from their captive. Generally, the author of the policy is the captive's retained legal counsel, or it could be the risk pool's engaged legal counsel. It will depend on the structure that the captive is involved with. Now, the users of the policy seem kind of obvious. It's the employer or the organization. However, can the captive issue a policy to the employee? Very unlikely that will ever happen. And the reason is the captive is a private insurance company. It can only issue policies to the owner. The employee is never an owner of a captive insurance company. Important elements. The policy itself is filed with the domicile. So if you're domiciled in South Carolina, for example, your policy is on file with that domicile. The domicile does approve the policy that is issued to the owner of the captive. And probably most importantly, the policy itself is written for the benefit of the captive. And since the captive is likely wholly owned by the employer, they're one and the same. So the policy will be written to ultimately benefit the captive and the employer. Okay? Policy language. At some point in the future, you may discover language within the policy that may not be entirely accurate or things may change. Policy plan modification is relatively easy. Make the modification language, submit it to the domicile for approval, and that's it. If you're a commercial carrier, you've got to submit the updated language to all of the admitted states that you are permitted to do business with. It's a little bit more time consuming. Okay? Reinsurance and retrocession agreement. The reinsurance is an agreement between the risk pool and the captive. And that expresses how the pool is going to accept the risk of the captive. Okay? The retrocession is the agreement that shifts the risk back to the pool participants. Okay? Generally speaking, the reinsurance and the retrocession will have the language of those policies drafted by the risk pool's engaged legal counsel. Okay? So some of the things that you've got to, well, the users of the re and retro are the captive, of course. But some of the important elements are you should look at what's the cost of allowing the risk pool to accept and then shift the claims from your captive to the other captives. There's a cost to that. And what happens if a claim that you submit to the risk pool is ultimately denied? What leverage or what rights does your captive have if you don't agree with the risk pool's assessment as being a claim that's eligible for reimbursement? So you'll want to know what the policy and procedure are for denials and what are the appeals process. So this graphic here represents the reinsurance agreement. So let's assume that Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, Echo, these are all captives. And captive Alpha has a $100 claim. Alpha cedes to the pool that $100. Okay? And the reinsurance agreement, which the pool engages with captive Alpha, expresses how that's shifted and shared. So in other words, maybe if captive has a $100 claim, maybe only $60 goes up to the pool and Alpha captive pays the other $40. But that's going to be expressed in the reinsurance agreement. The retrocession shifts that $100 claim back down to all of the captive participants. Now, maybe there's a cost to that. Let's assume that it's a 5% cost to administer that $100 claim. Therefore, that $100 claim translates into $105, and then each one of the captives assumes 20% plus the cost of the administrative fee. So $105 is then allocated back down to the captives. Each one pays $21. That expression is written within the retrocession agreement. So, structural documents, very key to any captive arrangement. Hope this was helpful. We'll see you next week when we talk about another very good topic. Bye now.